everyone, and welcome to the today's session. Our today's session is on understanding microservice architecture with Spring Boot basics. I would like to introduce today's presenter, Mr. Darshan Joshi sir. He is a specialist programmer of Infosys Limited, Pune. He has a 6+ years of experience in the IT industries. So, without wasting too much time, let me start. So, Darshan sir, please can you continue?
Thanks, Imani, for the introduction. And hi, guys. Hope you are all doing well in this pandemic situation. Let's just start. We'll just focus on today's agenda. First of all, we'll discuss what is the front end and back end, and then followed by introduction to the back end, the REST APIs. After that, we'll discuss introduction to the microservices with the Spring Boot. We'll compare the microservice architecture with the monolith architecture. We'll take the advantages of the microservices. We'll create live Spring Boot microservices. We'll check how microservices communicate with each other with the different methods, and we'll show you what is the introduction of the Docker, how to deploy a microservice in the container. Yep. So front end and back end are the two most popular terms used in the web development, as you might know. These terms are very crucial for the web development, but quite different from each other. Each side needs to be communicate and operate effectively with each other as a single unit to improve the website's functionality. So let's just focus. So as you can see in this image, this one side is a front end and the other one is a back end. Let's just focus on the front end development. As part of the website, that user interacts with directly in terms of front end. So when you open any website, and whatever you see in the website is called the front end. It's also referred to as a client side of the application. It includes everything that users experience directly. The button you click, the images, and all the UX you see in any website is a part of front end. So colors, styles, images, and buttons, everything. HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are the languages used for the front-end development. So here I've mentioned some of the languages. So front-end languages are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, etc. There are some frameworks which is being used that are the JavaScript frameworks, which is AngularJS, React.js, jQuery, and Flutter. Flutter is not a different platform provided, open source platform provided by Google. And AngularJS and React.js are based on the JavaScript, which is a front-end framework. I've kept the most popular frameworks here. It's not all. Let's just let me go through the backend part. Backend is the server side of the website. It stores and arranges the data. Backend basically talks to the database, and frontend talks to the backend, and backend talks to the database eventually. So it stores and arranges the data, and also makes sure everything on the client side of the website works fine. So whenever you click on any button from the front end goes to the back end and asks for the required data, and back end reacts and then provide the required data, and the front end's job is to show that data in the website. It's a portion of the software that does not come in the direct contact with the users. So as I've explained, front end goes to the back end is not visible to any of the user. The parts and characteristics developed by backend designers are indirectly accessed by the users through a front-end application, as I've explained. Activities like writing APIs, creating libraries, and working with the system components without user interfaces or even system or specific programming are also included in the backend. So basically, backend is a part which is not visible to the users. Front-end only talks to the backend. So some of the backend languages are Java, Python, PHP, JavaScript. JavaScript can be used as the both front end and the back end. That's the beauty of JavaScript. Other than that, Node.js is again an open source and cross platform, you can use or create a mobile application with the JavaScript as well. JavaScript is everywhere. Environment for executing the JavaScript code outside the browser, and C Sharp and Go is a language provided by Google. It's again an open source language. There are some backend frameworks like Spring Boot, Django. Spring Boot is based on Java. Django is based on Python. Laravel based on PHP, and Express is based on the Node.js. So I've kept the most popular frameworks here as part of this webinar. Let's just focus on the backend part. So as I've explained, like front end talks to the backend. How? So the application generally has two parts, as I explained, front end and back end. REST stands for the representational state transfer. It is a set of protocol or standards that describes how communication should take place between one system to other. It means from front end to back end, or maybe back end to back end, because back end also communicates with other back end system to get some data. So that's why I've mentioned like one system to other system. REST API is known to us a state of rules that developers follow when they create an API. API is an interface between a front end and the back end. Suppose a web app wants to communicate with the web server. You can say that it's a back end. So a REST API uses get, post, put, delete, and several methods of the HTTP based on the standards defined to communicate with the backend. We can say that REST is an architectural style for designing network applications. It uses a simple HTTP methods to communicate between clients and servers, but it should be noted that HTTP and REST are not the same. HTTP has some methods, it's a different protocol, and REST is a standard. REST API is known to us as a state of rules that developers follow when they are creating API or developing anything in the backend. One such rule says that we should be able to attend a specification when we link to a specific URL. This URL is a locator which, when browsed to, generates a request, and specification, it gets a call to the response. So basically, as I've explained, front end talks to the backend. So when a user, let's take an example, when a user clicks on a button, front end goes to the backend using a URL, because backend needs to know what data needs to be returned in the response. So front end sends a request to a particular URL and expects a response. So this request and response model. Now let's just move to the microservices. If you have any questions for front end and back end, you can just put it in comment. We'll take up all questions in the last. Okay, so microservices is an approach to developing a single application as a suite of small services, each running on its own process and communicating with lightweight mechanism, often an HTTP resource API. So microservice is a small applications which been developed by backend developers, which consist APIs for different scenarios or different requirements. Microservices allow a large system to be built upon from a number of collaborating components. It does at the process level what Spring has always done at the component level, loosely coupled processes instead of loosely coupled components. So as I've explained, it's the small services process differently. So we have divided all processes into separate services. So one service process one thing. So that's why it's loosely coupled. I'll just compare this thing, microservice architecture with the monolith, so that you can just understand what is the flaws of monolith application. So monolith application are typically a huge, more than 1 lakh lines of code, in some instances even more than million lines of code. So for example, when a front end goes to the backend must be hosted in one server or maybe multiple servers, right? So in this monolith application, the all backend is hosted only in the one place, and all the requirements of that front end website provided by that one backend service. So one backend service, it's called the monolith application, and that one backend service only talks to the one database. So when you have a huge application, then you might have facing some challenges, like because we have all the code in one service and it talks to the one database, so it will be a huge database. Monoliths are characterized by large application size, long release cycles, and large teams. So for example, as I've explained, when you have a big giant application in as a one service, when you want to release a small thing, you can't do that, because eventually you have to roll out the whole application. So for example, I have a huge application. If I want to deploy that into production, I need to test the whole lot features which I have changed, right? So it's a release cycle is a very long release cycle. We cannot directly just change it and deploy it. And the size goes, so as I've explained, a huge database, so it goes with a very large size and large teams. Self-explanatory. Okay, this is an example of monolith application. When a browser goes to the backend, this is backend service. This is all. See, this HTML, JavaScript, and MVC is a part of front end. This is services, and access data is a database. So this monolith application is deployed only. See, front end is also needs some hosting, right? So this front end and this back end and the database all are deployed into a single server, right? So this is an example of monolith application. Some of the typical challenges when we are facing with the monolith application. One is scalability challenge. For example, if we have an e-commerce application where you have some setting screens, some cart screen, and some product screen, right? You might know that some of the product screens are very much used by users, but setting screen and other screens or other pages of website are not being used frequently, right? So when you want to scale that application, for example, you have designed an application for 10,000 users and somehow fortunately you've got 50,000 users, then you have to scale that application. And the scaling means you have to increase the memory and processing power of the machine in which you have hosted that application. So basically, you'll increase the size of that virtual machine, or maybe in any hosting server. So scalability challenges, new technology adoption. So for example, it's all in one service. So for example, you've developed this all monolith application into Java backend language. Now then we have so much libraries and ready-made things in the Python, and you want to create a new capability of that web application using Python, then you can't do that because we have adopted Java. So when you start designing monolith application, you have to be so sure that you are going to use this technology as a backend and this technology, and you have to see the future of the technology as well as the future of your your application. It's difficult to perform automation test cases. So as I've explained, like when you have to deploy that applications into the production, then you have to perform all the automation tests, and that could be difficult because you don't have. So for example, it's a large application, you have 500 automation test cases you have to run through all, even though you've changed only one thing. Right, so it's quite difficult to manage, difficult to adapt to modern development practices. As I've explained, yeah, you cannot adapt a new technology, and you have to be so sure whenever you start a development. Yeah, let's move. What does the microservice architecture look like? Microservice architecture looks like this. I've explained the shopping service, which is the online shopping service. One is the account service, product catalog, cart server, and the order server. This all services, all microservices, you can deploy this microservice into different servers, which talks to individual databases. So this is all different database. You have a different database for product, different for cart, and different database for the orders. Advantages of microservices. So the new technology and process adoption becomes easier. You can try a new technology with a newer microservice that we can create. So for example, you have created this, it is possible, then you will create this microservice, product catalog microservice into Java, and cart server microservice into Python. It's possible. So whenever front end goes to the backend, front end only knows the URL, request, and the response. Front end talks to the backend. Front end doesn't know anything what is going on in the backend. Either it's a Python or Java. Front end is only responsible for getting the response, right? Faster release cycle. So for example, you have to develop a new microservice. It's quick and easy. You can just directly change that thing and deploy it. Scaling with the cloud. Scaling with the cloud, what I mean by this is if this account service, it's not being used for frequently used by the users. So the traffic of this service is for example 100 users per day, and the traffic for product catalog service is 10,000 users per day. So you then don't have to scale all application. You just scale this server because it has a more traffic, and you can just let it be this account service. So the scalable with the cloud. So its scaling part is very easy, and you'll pay only for this service. And in the monolith architecture, if you have deployed all these services into one server, then you have to scale up that whole server. So it will cost you too much. Challenges. There's always challenges in everything. So there are some challenges with the microservice architecture as well. The first thing is quick setup needed. You cannot spend a month setting up on each microservice. You should be able to create microservice quickly. So what I mean by this is let's say for one particular project you have 50 60 microservices. You cannot spend months of time to create and deploy one microservice. It should be quick, otherwise you'll spending too much time in development and release cycle will delay. Automation, because there are a number of smaller components instead of monolith, you need to automate everything. This is a deployment. This is talking about a build automation, deployment automation, as well as the monitoring. So what I mean by build automation is whenever you change anything and you want to deploy that application into the cloud or into the server, you have to build that application. So in case of Java, you have to create a jar or var and deploy that. So the creation of jar file needs to be automated, and deployment. The jar needs to be deployed on some server. So that deployment needs to be automated. And monitoring. So you have many microservices. You need to make sure that nothing is down. Otherwise it will reflect into front end. Visibility. So you now have a number of smaller components to deploy and maintain, maybe 100 or maybe 1,000 components. So you should be able to monitor and identify problems automatically. You need a great visibility around all the components. This components means all the services. So whenever you deployed 100 microservices, you need to keep eye on. You can't keep eye on 100 microservices, right? So you need to automate the fault things, and basically you just have to monitor and identify the problems. It should be automatic, right? Configuration management. You need to maintain the configuration for hundreds of components across the environments. you would need a configuration management solution, challenges with microservices architecture. So in the industry, we have several kinds of environments. For example, if you are changing anything, or the first one is a development environment in which developers is going to work. Let's just take two environments only, one development and two is a production. There are several environments like QA, UAT, and all stuffs, but let's just focus on the development and the production for now. So production environment is a services in the environment which consumed by the front end, which is visible to all, right? And the development environment. So for example, if I'm developing one microservice, I should have one development environment in which I'm, writing my code and changing the things. I should have a different database for testing purpose as well. Otherwise, I can't do that in the, if I do that in the production, it will reflect to the front end. So this managing of all the environments is quite difficult with the microservice architecture, right? So now let's talk about the solution to the challenges of this microservices. And here comes Spring Boot for the rescue. Spring Boot is a framework based on the Java. So Spring Boot enables building production-ready applications quickly and provide a non-functional features. There are some features I mentioned of the Spring Boot. The first one is embedded servers. So easy deployment with the containers. So embedded servers means you must have used some servers while deploying this Java or Spring Boot applications. So Spring Boot provides embedded servers, so you don't have to configure all a different server and deploy your jar file into that server. It's only a plug and play. You just run it and all done. Metrics monitoring. Spring Boot provides some of the tools which can be used for the metrics or maybe a monitoring purpose of this whole Spring Boot microservices. Health checks is a part of monitoring, so it's the same. Apart from this, externalized configuration. Spring Cloud provides a tool for developers to quickly build some of the common patterns in distributed systems. Coordination of the distributed system leads to a boilerplate patterns, and using Spring Cloud, developers can quickly stand up services and applications that implement those patterns. Solution to challenges with the microservice architectures. So basically, Spring Boot is configurable with Spring Cloud, and Spring Cloud is a whole set of tools which provides ease of use of some of the technologies and some of the tools to the developers. Yeah, so now let's just create Spring Boot microservices. The creating of the Spring microservice, a microservice is a standalone process that handles a well-defined requirement. We're going to use a Spring initializer for creating a Spring Boot microservices. So let's just create a new Spring Boot application. So here is from this link start.spring.io, you can create a new microservice. Spring itself provide an initializer from which you can create a new project. So let's just create one. I've already created some of the projects for you guys, but I'm gonna show for only one microservice. I'm going to show how you can create new microservices and how you can add a new dependency from here as well. Right, so let me just bring some of the dependencies. Yep, here it is. I've already done that. As part of this demo, we are going to use a DB, which is H2 database, which is an in-memory database. In memory means whenever you restart the application, the database will be cleared. So as mentioned here, provide the fast in-memory database that supports JDBC API with a small 2 MB footprint. Supports the embedded and server modes as well as the browser-based console application. So you can just see the database from the browser and the console as well. Spring Boot is a starter project, is including a RESTful application using Spring MVC, uses Apache Tomcat as a default embedded container. So as I explained, Spring Boot provides some of the embedded containers. Here we are going to use Apache Tomcat because it's a default embedded container, means default embedded server. Lombok is a developer tools library which is being used for creating some of the many used methods and helps to reduce the boilerplate codes. Persist the data in the SQL. So we are going to use a Spring Data JPA. Spring Data JPA provides some of the methods um, that can help us to talk with the database. So here we are going to create a Maven project. This is a build tool. You can create a Gradle project as well as a Maven project. Language would be Java. We are taking the most stable version of the Spring Boot, which is 2.4.4. We have to define some group artifact, basically a package information, the package name. We have to provide the packaging jar or while or var. We are going to take the jar, and then we are going to take the Java. Here I'm going to take the Java 8 for now. So let me just change the name of this. It's going to be a product microservice com.example.product. So for this we are going to create two microservices as part of this webinar. One is product microservice and cart microservice. So in the product microservice we are going to create two APIs, one to add a new product and the other one is to get a list of products with all details using the product IDs. Cart microservices is in the cart microservices we are going to create two APIs, one for add product to cart and get list of products added in the cart using user ID. We are not going to develop any of the microservice for the user. We are just mimicking this user ID for ease of use. Yeah, so let me just go again with this Spring Initializer. We are going to do these things and just click on generate. It will download a zip file and you can just you can just extract zip file. Let me just quickly do that. Yeah, product. Yeah, we have a product microservice created. See, it's so easy to creating a new microservice with the Spring Boot. Let me just open that project. I'm going to use IntelliJ IDEA IDE as an IDE. So you might use a STS or maybe Eclipse for this development. See here, product microservice. I'll just open this in a new window. Yep, it's opened. You can see the project. It's a Maven project. That's why it's added .mvn. You don't have to use anything. It's a ready-made project. It should have only one application. You can just run this application and I just started this application. Let's wait for some time. It's building. You can see here. first build will take some time. Otherwise, from the second time, it will not take some time. It will get all the required libraries for the first time. Build is completed. Now it's running. It will run automatically. You just need to bear for some time. As you can see in the logs, Tomcat server has been initialized on the port number 8080 and it's starting the service. And though we have added H2 database, which is in memory database, that's why it's initializing all the Hibernate and all database things. We have added the GPA as well in the POM file. You can see those all details which we've added here in the pom.xml file. So if you open the pom.xml file, you can just see the starter project. We've added the GPA, we've added the starter web, H2 database, and the project Lombok for to avoid some boilerplate codes, right? So this is executing. As you can see, the Tomcat, I haven't added any context path, so it's up and running. So our microservice is running on the port number 8080. You can just check whether it's running or not by just opening the local host. You can just mention 8080. Cannot find anything because I've added by mistake this thing. Yeah, you can see the application has a no expression. Whenever you see this white label error page, that means your application is up and running. It will return a 404 because we don't have any context path, or we haven't added any page for error not found 404. So it's up and running. Now let's just stop it. For now, just stopping this application. Let's just create one simple example for backend APIs. For that, I'm going to create a new package and name it controller. In this, we are going to create a new Java class for product controller. We have done that. Here we'll let Spring Boot knows that this is the REST controller, which might having a REST APIs. We'll create one sample API which returns string for now, and like a test API, we can add this and then return test API. We can say hello from test API. Right. So this is done. Now we need to tell Spring Boot that the request method. So we are providing here, it's a get mapping, and we'll only say that this is the get mapping. And we have to provide some URL. So here we can pass URL. So URL can be product. Right? So yeah, this is first API has been created. You can just check it in the Postman. Postman is a tool which can be used to test the RESTful APIs. So let me just copy this thing. Localhost 8080 slash product, which we have added as part of this microservice. Oh, we've not started it yet. Let me just run this application. Let's build it successfully. You'll find some compilation error within before the build. So now the project is compiled successfully. So let's just wait for a few seconds for this to up. It will run on the same port 8080 using the Tomcat server. Yep, it started successfully on the port number 8080. So we can just directly hit this URL localhost colon 8080 slash product. Why slash product? Is just because we have mentioned here in the request mapping of this controller slash product. So whenever you hit this URL, you can see it's taking some time. Yep. See, hello from the test API. You received 200K, 200 OK. So it's successful. API has been created. This is just a test API. So basically, this is a request method which front end will pass, and this URL is using which front end will take the data. So now then I've created a new microservices for this product and the cart service. Let me just walk through that microservices directly. Let me just close this. I hope you understand how we can create a new microservice using a Spring Boot. So this is a demo part. The controller, product controller, as we have created, we have created two APIs. post mapping. With the post mapping, one is to add product and other is to get product list. So you can just add this request mapping. So whenever you add the request mapping at the controller level, it will bind this first and then it will add this get all. So it will create an URL like localhost colon 8080 / product / get all. Whenever you hit that URL, you will get the product list. There are some expectations from the front end, which you can mention as the request body, product request, and in the product detail request. Here I have created one new service class which provides the service to get the products. And as we have used JPA, then you can just go here in the repository. You can just extend the JPA repository and mention the entity name. So we've created a new entity, which is product, which is having this columns: ID, name, description, and the price. So this is a column table, and the table name would be product. So whenever you run this application, it will create a DB instance. Here in the application.properties file, you'll have to mention that the H2 console needs to be enabled. H2 is an in-memory database which we have used, and this data source. In the data source, we have currently passed this testDB. TestDB is the DB name. We can change the DB name from here. So it will create a new database with the empty tables, and it will create only one table just because we have mentioned here the entity and we've provided the table name as a product. So it will create a new table for us. This is a repository from using which we can just communicate with the DB tables. And this is the service layer. In the service layer, we are just writing the business logic. So there are three parts of any Spring Boot backend microservice: controller, service, and the repository. Controller's job is to take the request and all the configuration related to request mapping. Services work all needs to be added. All the business logic is there in the service layer, and there's the repository layer which talks to the database for us. Let's just wait for this to start up. Until then, I'll just when you analyze this logs, you'll find it will create a database there. It will put some logs here for database as well. See here, database available at this URL testdb, and this URL h2 console URL. So whenever you'll put this h2 console in the browser, you'll find the database things. I'll just show you that after this initialization happened. Yep, started demo application. Demo application is just a product application. Let me just show you that URL. Whenever you open this URL, let me just refresh it. Whenever you open H2 console, it will open like this, and here you can mention the DB name. So in our case, it was testdb. The username and password is default SA and password is empty. Whenever you click on connect, you'll see a database, and here in the left hand side you'll find database tables. So we've created only one table, and this is, let's just fire a query, select star from the product. So here you find ID, description, name, and price. So these are the DB columns which we've added in this product entity: name, description, price, and ID. Right? ID is auto generated. It will be a long value, and it will be auto generated. So let me just add use some APIs for this. See, I'm just adding a post request. As you can see in this controller, we've added a post mapping for this product. So slash product post mapping will pass these three things: product name, product description, and the price, which will be 100 for this any dummy product. And currently we are only returning a string as a success. So whenever I hit this, it will add a new product to the DB. Yeah, we've got success response. Let's just check in the DB. Let me run this again. See, auto generated ID 1, product description, product name, and 100. We'll just add one another product. The name would be another product. Let's just keep this way. Product description, and we'll just change 1100 for this product. I'll just send it again. It will add a new product in the DB. Just run this query. Yeah, we have our second entry in which we have another product with 100,000 rupees. Yep, this is done for the product microservice. This is how you can create a new microservice and add 10 APIs. This API thing, front end will hit this URL with this. So let's take an example, like if you need to add a new product, right? So you might have some text fields in the front end. So whenever you add those text fields and click on the OK button, front end code or maybe a JavaScript code takes that parameters added in the text fields and pass that to the backend like this. And the backend's job is to save that data into database and provide the all details whenever front end asks. I just created a new microservice. I just created a new microservice for the cart. As I mentioned, we have a one API /cart/add for adding a new item into cart. This is the request model. Let's just see. This request model is expecting product ID and the user ID. So front end will pass the product ID and user ID, and back end will add this product ID into this user's cart. So this is how this product and carts things work. Though we can run this application, I've created a new database like cart, and I've mentioned the server port. This is how you can change the port of the Tomcat server. Since this product application is running on 8080 port, which is the default port, we can't run the another application on the same port. So I've changed the port 8081. Let me just run this application. It will run on port number 8081. And we'll create a new DB /cart. Until this starts, let me just explain the code here. Let's just go to the service layer. Yep, in the service layer, we are just adding this two parameters into cart table, product ID and the user ID, and we are just saving it. So it will add that entry into this repository. This repository is our repository, which is extending a JPA repository for this table. Cart is a new table. The name of the table will be cart. It will have auto-generated unique primary key ID and user ID and the product ID. So there are two APIs which I mentioned: add to cart and get cart items. So it will take some time because we have integrated the database with this. This card controller add to cart API will return the success for now. It will not be the case in the production level application. We can't just return the success. We have to return the proper response to, so that front end will show that. Though we are not going to use a front end to showcasing this APIs, we'll only use Postman. So it's fine for the demonstration purpose. Now let's just see some logs. As per the logs, you can just find this database from the H2 console with the database cart thing. So the database name will be cart, and it will run. It will already initialized the Tomcat with the port number 8081 because we have defined that port number into application.properties file. And now it's initializing the JPA thing just to initialize this all JPA and all repositories. Okay, it started. Let me just we are running out of time. Let me just quickly show what is implemented in the cart service. Here we've added post request. We'll add 8081/cart/add and pass the user ID. We'll just add the user ID, one user ID with the product one. We've already added two products, you remember, with the ID 1 and ID 2. For now, we are just mimicking the user ID. So user ID is not real user ID. So we'll only use one product ID. So it will add one product to the cart. Yep, we've got success. And now when you can just go to H2 console and just let me just refresh this thing and just log into CartDB. Let me just select the data from cart. It's added one product to user ID 1. Let me just add another product for this user. Send one more request until we've received success. Let me just explain the other things. Yeah, here I've created a new API for getting the list. So as you can see in this other method, I've just created API for get the cart items. So here I'm going to the localhost 8080 product get all. You remember which API we've created to get all products. So I'm going using the REST template. So this is a part of the agenda where we are supposed to cover the how we can communicate with the other microservices. So as part of this, we have just added the communication to the microservices using the REST template. Let me just check. Yeah, new product has been added. Now whenever I go to this API, this will cart/get/2. I'm just passing this one is a user ID. So whenever I click on this API, it will get me the details of all products. So as you remember from Amazon or Flipkart, whenever you click on the cart button, you can see the list of your products. How can you see that? So this is how front end goes to the backend and backend returns the product details. It's just taking time. Yep. So this is all. We've got two products, product name and another product, because we have added two products for this particular user. So we've got this, but now we've fired this URL to the cart service. How would the cart service will know the product details? Because the product details is a part of product service, right? So there we are communicating with the product service. So whenever the cart microservice finds the details of the product, so in this code you can just find cart service has only product IDs. And now using that product IDs, cart detail service is going to the product detail service to fetch the all data. So it's all backend thing. Front end doesn't know that this all communication is happening. So this is how microservices communicate with each other. Yeah. So this is all. There are some things, other components of the microservices architecture like API gateway. Just a minute. Yeah. So it's API gateway, or you can say a reverse proxy, which is a Zool Nginx APG. It can be used if you have too many services, like 100 of services, then you can use a Eureka as a service discovery, which can help us monitoring the services. Service communication, we have seen the one way using the REST template. You can use a FAIN client is provided by a Spring Cloud for the communication between the microservices, and for the deployment you can just the Spring Cloud. Thank you guys. That's all for today's webinar. Let me know your thoughts and your comments in the comment box, or you can just ping me on this email ID. I'll respond to you as soon as possible. Yeah.
Okay. So I would like to thank you, our today's presenter, Mr. Darshan Joshi sir, for visiting and enlightening us with their knowledge. Webinar was full of knowledge and interesting things, with especially with Spring Boot coding. It gave deep insight into the topic and also revealed some interesting facts. Session was very informative. I'm pretty too sure that the precious knowledge that Mr. Darshan sir gave us will definitely help us in our studies and future work. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Himani. Thanks all.
Okay, so we are ending the session now. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Have a good day.
Okay, bye.